October 16, 1946. 2:45 a.m. The location is a gymnasium inside Nuremberg Prison. The air is cold. The space is sterile. The conversion from a sports hall to an execution chamber is purely functional. Basketball hoops are covered with dark cloth. The windows are painted over with thick black pigment. There is no natural light. The acoustics in the room are sharp. Every movement echoes against the high ceilings and wooden floorboards. The gallows stand at the center. 3 wooden structures, painted dark, dominate the floor. The room measures 33 by 80 feet. It is not a stage for a drama. It is a processing unit. Did the witnesses expect a formal ceremony? The reality was a cramped, brightly lit box smelling of old sweat and fresh timber. Guards stand in silence. The only sound is the rhythmic thud of boots on the temporary wooden walkway. This was a rare logistical event. Since the end of the Middle Ages, no such high-ranking group of military leaders had been systematically put to death on the same night. The path to the gallows began not in a cell, but at a desk in the high command. Alfred Jodl operated as the supreme administrator of the German war machine. He was born on May 10, 1890, in Würzburg. By 1944, he had refined the art of the bureaucratic massacre. He was a quiet office worker, yet the scale of his sanctioned killings exceeded the casualties of most frontline generals. Jodl functioned as a high-speed processor of death. Data arrived. Jodl analyzed. Jodl signed. The document became a lethal reality. He treated the liquidation of human beings as a matter of logistical throughput. His pen moved across the paper with clinical precision. In June 1941, he processed the Commissar order. This single document mandated the immediate execution of all captured Soviet political officers. Later came the Commando order. It stripped Allied special forces of their rights as prisoners of war. It sentenced them to death without trial. Every signature triggered a sequence of mechanical violence. When the prosecution presented these documents in court, Jodl remained composed. He viewed his actions as a series of completed administrative tasks. He denied all personal responsibility for the resulting massacres. The Wehrmacht legal machinery required precise terminology for mass murder. How do you transform a war crime into a bureaucratic procedure? Through the substitution of concepts. Jodl mastered this linguistic shift. In 1941, he drafted the Nacht und Nebel decree, night and fog. The name sounded like poetry. The reality was a logistical void. Under this order, captured resistance fighters in occupied territories vanished. Steel filing cabinets filled the office. Piles of folders marked secret lay on the desks. Jodl signed. The typewriter keys struck the paper. Resistance members were not executed. They disappeared into the mist. No records, no graves, no notification to families. The number of those missing under this decree eventually equaled the population of a mid-sized German city. Jodl applied the same cold logic to the Eastern Front. Hundreds of thousands of Soviet prisoners of war died under his directives. During the later trials, prosecutors confronted him with the massacre of those unable to move. Jodl did not deny the killings. He refined the definition. He stated that the only prisoners shot were not those who could not walk, but those who did not want to walk. One specific phrase from Jodl's defense highlighted his methodology. He claimed he was merely a technical intermediary for the Führer's will. He remained methodical while others ranted. He processed the deportation of Danish citizens and Jews to concentration camps with the same calm used for supply reports. His signature appeared on the order to execute commandos without trial. Jodl maintained total composure while handling these documents. The efficiency of Alfred Jodl was measured in high explosives. His desk functioned as a slaughterhouse of paper. While other Nazi leaders ranted, Jodl remained silent. He processed, he calculated, he signed. Berlin, October 7, 1941. A typewriter rhythmically strikes a new directive. The target, Moscow and Leningrad. Jodl did not see cities. He saw engineering problems. His orders mandated total demolition. Surrender was not an option. He calculated the necessary tonnage of TNT for every square kilometer of civilian housing. The documents reveal a man obsessed with technical parameters. He viewed human lives as mere statistics in a ledger. Jodl could order a mass execution before lunch and return to strategic planning immediately. No hesitation, no emotional fluctuation. 4 million civilians lived in these target zones. Jodl signed the paper. One signature condemned millions. He treated the annihilation of the Soviet capital as a routine logistical task. The logistics of murder required cold precision. Jodl provided it without a single missed beat. He never questioned the math. Jodl viewed the Soviet Union through a lens of spatial logistics. Military conquest was merely the first phase. The second phase required a partnership with Alfred Rosenberg. Together, they synchronized the General Plan Ost with the movements of the Wehrmacht. How did the General Staff turn a military offensive into a mechanism for genocide? They integrated the hunger policy directly into the fuel and ammunition charts. Operation Barbarossa covered a territory larger than all of Western Europe combined. Jodl's maps did not just mark enemy divisions. They marked zones for complete structural erasure. He drafted the orders to level Moscow and Leningrad to the ground. Surrender was not an option. The blueprints demanded the physical removal of millions of civilians from the food supply chain. Strategic brilliance served total destruction. In Norway, the implementation was equally precise. Jodl signed the evacuation orders for the northern regions during the height of the Arctic winter. Soldiers moved from house to house with incendiary kits. Families watched from the snow as their villages burned. The scorched earth policy was a mathematical success. Jodl's signature rendered 30,000 families homeless. The man who planned the annihilation of Moscow ended his war in a schoolhouse in France. On May 7, 1945, Alfred Jodl sat in a room in Reims. He wore his full military uniform. He picked up a pen. With a few strokes of ink, he signed the instrument of unconditional surrender. The act ended the Third Reich. It did not end the formalities. The Soviet Union demanded a second ceremony in Berlin. They required the Supreme Command to acknowledge total defeat on captured ground. Between these two signatures, Jodl remained a transition figure. He headed the temporary Flensburg government. He still held rank. He still issued orders. The contrast was absolute. One day, he signed the fate of a nation. 2 weeks later, he could not control his own. On May 23, 1945, British troops arrived at the Flensburg enclave. They did not come for negotiations. They came for arrests. Soldiers stripped the German officers of their insignia. They took their watches and their cyanide capsules. Jodl ceased to be a colonel general. He became a prisoner. The Allies moved the high-ranking captives to Luxembourg. They utilized a former palace converted into a detention center known as Camp Ashcan. No cameras, no staff, no titles. Guards assigned Jodl a number and a basic cell. From this holding point, the military authorities prepared his transfer to the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg. The transition from the war room to the dock was complete. Military police escorted Jodl to the waiting transport for his final journey under guard. On November 20, 1945, Jodl's strategy shifted from global offensive to deep defense. The courtroom in Nuremberg became his last bunker. Static crackled in the heavy black headphones. Translators struggled to keep pace with the technical coldness of the evidence. The prosecution avoided emotional pleas. They relied on paper. The stack included signed directives, minutes of secret meetings, and private diary entries. Jodl's signature appeared on orders for the summary execution of captured commandos. He sat motionless. His defense rested on a single legal pillar: superior orders. Was he merely a transmission belt for Hitler's will? The evidence suggested a more active role. The prosecution dismantled the just following orders narrative with mechanical precision. Documents proved Jodl did not just sign papers. He edited them. He refined the language to ensure no loopholes for mercy existed. In one instance, he personally tightened the wording of the commando order to ensure total liquidation. He didn't just obey, he optimized the machinery of death. This legal confrontation spanned 10 months of exhaustive testimony. Judges weighed thousands of documents against the testimony of the man who once mapped the fall of Europe. The verdict arrived on October 1, 1946. The defense strategy collapsed under the weight of a single speech from November 1943. This document acted as a forensic anchor for the prosecution. Jodl addressed military governors with a specific directive. He demanded they remain vigorous and remorseless. His voice filled the courtroom through the speakers. On the screens, the prosecution played footage from liberated concentration camps. Stacks of bodies, skeletal survivors, ash in the pits. Jodl watched the grain of the film. He had signed thousands of documents authorizing these outcomes. Did the general merely follow orders? The evidence suggested personal initiative. Jodl's 1943 speech focused on the Atlantic Wall. He ordered the forced conscription of laborers from occupied territories. He did not ask for cooperation. He demanded total exploitation. The transcript showed phrases underlined for emphasis. One document outweighed hundreds of hours of defensive testimony. Judge Henri Donadieu de Vabre sat in the tribunal. The Frenchman initially expressed an individual opinion. He doubted certain charges, but the logistics of the Holocaust were undeniable. The prosecution presented the records of the Danish Jewish deportations. Jodl had coordinated the transport logistics. He claimed ignorance of the final destination. The court produced his signature on the transit schedules. His denials became quiet. The logistical chain of the genocide led directly to his desk. Jodl's defense line shattered. Execution duties fell to Master Sergeant John S. Woods. The Army record listed him as a specialist. In reality, Woods lacked formal training. He had no documented experience in professional execution. Yet the commission entrusted him with 10 of the most notorious war criminals in history. Was the hangman's incompetence a calculation or a mistake? 24 hours before the event, the errors were already built into the timber. Woods supervised the construction of 3 gallows in the prison gymnasium. Soldiers painted the wooden beams olive green. The scent of fresh industrial paint filled the hall. Woods tested the traps. He had already executed Germans at other prisons. In those cases, the victims died slowly. The mechanics of the drop required a precise ratio between body weight and rope length. Woods ignored the standard tables. He shortened the fall. He narrowed the trapdoor opening. These technical deviations ensured that the neck would not break instantly. Instead of a sudden cervical fracture, the prisoners faced protracted strangulation. Woods prepared the equipment for a process of slow suffocation. He calculated the drop incorrectly. At midnight on October 16th, theoretical engineering failures became physical agony. The gymnasium interior was silent. 3 scaffolds stood ready under the glare of electric lights. Black curtains surrounded the wooden bases. These screens served one purpose: to hide the final muscle spasms of the condemned from the witnesses. Officials, journalists, and medics waited in the cold air. The room smelled of fresh olive green paint. What happens when the drop is too short? A standard execution breaks the 3rd and 4th cervical vertebrae. The spinal cord snaps. Consciousness vanishes in 0.2 seconds. But Sergeant Woods calculated the fall incorrectly. Instead of a clean break, the rope tightened around the windpipe. The trapdoor opened with a heavy thud. The body fell, but the neck remained intact. The mechanism failed to kill instantly. The victims hit the edges of the narrow hatches as they dropped. Then, the slow process of asphyxia began. Without a broken neck, the heart continues to pump oxygen-depleted blood to the brain. The struggle for air lasts up to 2 minutes. Inside the throat, the hyoid bone fractures. The tongue swells. The only sounds were the rhythmic creaking of the hemp rope and the muffled kicks against the wooden frame. The black curtains rippled with every movement from within. 11 men were scheduled to face this process. The room remained still as the first names were called. High-ranking officers and party officials stood in line near the entrance. No one in the gymnasium spoke. At 2 hours and 38 minutes past midnight, guards summoned Alfred Jodl. The gymnasium remained dark behind the black curtains. No one spoke. Jodl maintained his military bearing. He did not break down. He did not protest his innocence. Witnesses noted a man who had accepted his fate. He climbed the steps of the scaffold with the same precision he once used to map out the invasion of Europe. The trapdoor opened at the standard signal. There was no sound of a breaking neck. Jodl's weight was insufficient for the drop height provided by John Woods. For 18 minutes, the rope remained taut. The official record confirmed the end of the process. Alfred Jodl was pronounced dead at 02:56.